It's incredible to consider that some of the most famous people from centuries past lived long enough to be photographed in a world where images have become an essential component of history. These historical titans, from Frederick Douglass, a well-known abolitionist leader, to John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States, were preserved through the lens. However, how did these uncommon images affect our perception of their legacies? And what did they look like in their later years? Come along as we look at the unexpected pictures of these influential people and learn the backstories of the infrequent times they were in front of the camera. Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley, whose real name was Phoebe Ann Mosey, was a female sniper who rose to fame while performing in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. From an early age, Oakley developed shooting skills to hunt for food for her family. After winning a competition for sharpshooters at the age of 15 and then appearing on Buffalo Bill's show in 1885, she gained widespread notice. Except for Bill, she received the highest salary during her tenure on the show. Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy, real name Robert Leroy Parker, was a well-known train robber in the Old West. Together with being the commander of the Wild Bunch, also a criminal outlaw group, he was ultimately compelled to leave the nation with Etta Pace, the Sundance Kid, and companion Alonzo Longbaugh. It's thought that in a gunfight with the Bolivian Army in 1908, Cassidy and the Sundance Kid perished. Cassidy is seen as a symbol of the Wild West in modern times. Leo Tolstoy. Russian author Leo Tolstoy, also known as Count Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, wrote in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Ever since his initial triumphs, he's been regarded as one of history's most significant. He was shortlisted for the Nobel Prize in 1901, 1902, and 1909, as well as the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1902 and 1906. His most well-known compositions are Anna Karenina, War and Peace, and The Death of Ivan Ilyich. John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was a statesman, lawyer, and diplomat born on July 11, 1767. His father was the 2nd President of the United States, and he had an older son. Quincy Adams served as an ambassador and a member of the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives for Massachusetts. As a member of the Democratic-Republican Party, he was elected as the 6th President of the United States in 1825. In the 1830s, he started to affiliate with the Whig Party. Harriet Tubman. Born into slavery, Harriet Tubman is closely linked to the Underground Railroad and her eventual escape. But after that, she committed herself to ensuring other people's freedom. Using the now famous Underground Railroad, a network of anti-slavery activists and safe houses, she oversaw 13 expeditions to free over 70 other slaves. In addition, Tubman carried on her liberation struggle while working for the Union Army as an Army scout and spy throughout the Civil War. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson practiced law on the frontier before serving as a member of the U.S. Senate, the House of Representatives, and the Tennessee Supreme Court. He was also a well-regarded soldier who led troops in the Creek War, the War of 1812, and the First Seminole War. In 1824, he unsuccessfully sought the presidency against John Quincy Adams. Following the creation of the Democratic Party, Jackson entered the race again and quickly won in 1828. Arthur Wellesley, 1st Duke of Wellington. Throughout the 19th century, Arthur Wellesley was a significant military and political figure in Britain. Anglo-Irish soldier credited with defeating Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo, also held 2 terms as the nation's prime minister. Hailed as one of the greatest military strategists in British history, he prevailed over more vigorous opponents in multiple engagements while minimizing the casualties among his troops. He became a national hero after defeating Napoleon, and in 1814 he was made the 1st Duke of Wellington. Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh was a 19th-century Dutch post-impressionist painter who gained notoriety for finishing over 2,000 pieces in a decade. Although he's regarded as one of the forerunners of contemporary art, Little was known about his creations during his lifetime. However, he was recognized as one of the most influential figures in Western art history after his passing. Regretfully, Van Gogh experienced delusions and mental episodes, which he chose to suppress until his suicide in 1890. Frederick Douglass. During the 19th century, Frederick Douglass was a revolutionary and political leader. He became an anti-slavery campaigner and a leading figure in the abolition movement in both Massachusetts and New York, after succeeding in escaping slavery in Maryland. Many people in the North were shocked to learn that he had formerly been a slave. Still, his influence and intelligence directly challenged the notion that African Americans could not become free and contributing members of society. Despite his disapproval, he was the first African American to be nominated for vice president later in life. Martin Van Buren. One of the principal figures of the Democratic Party's founding is recognized to have been Martin Van Buren. He held the positions of 8th Vice President, 10th Secretary of State, Governor of New York, and 8th President of the United States during his political tenure. Martin Van Buren, aided by Andrew Jackson, was victorious in the 1836 presidential contest. Nevertheless, he was defeated by William Henry Harrison in re-election in 1840. In 1848, Van Buren entered one last presidential campaign on behalf of the Free Soil Party. Samuel Wilson, or Uncle Sam. First used during the War of 1812, Uncle Sam has come to represent the American government and society. He's commonly perceived as a man wearing various American-related regalia, including a top hat, white hair, and a beard. The character is said to be based on Samuel Wilson, a man who worked as a meat packer in the War of 1812. Some joke that his barrels bore the initials U.S. for the United States, which stands for Uncle Sam. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, started as a lawyer, congressman, state legislator from Illinois, and leader of the Whig Party. When he was elected in 1860, pro-slavery states began to leave the Union, sparking the start of the Civil War. After that, Lincoln led the nation through the Civil War and kept the Union intact until his assassination in 1865. He's still regarded as one of the best presidents ever served. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, real name Henry McCarty, was an Old West criminal who started committing crimes as a young adolescent before becoming an orphan at 15. In his early years, McCarty participated in the Lincoln County War in New Mexico, where it's believed that he killed 3 men. Before becoming an adult, he was a federal fugitive, with wanted posters referring to him as Billy the Kid. It's reported that he killed 8 persons before taking his own life at the age of 21. Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane, real name Martha Jane Canary, was a legendary figure in the Wild West who was a sniper and frontierswoman connected to Wild Bill Hickok. She would go on to appear in Buffalo Bill's Wild West performance due to their friendship. She was nevertheless thought to have a particularly distinctive personality because of her reputation for being both a rough-and-tumble lady who frequently dressed like a male and an incredibly sympathetic person. Her name and other well-known figures from the Old West appear right at the top. Hannah Stilley Gorby. Hannah Stilley Gorby, born in Wilmington, Delaware in 1746, is thought to be the earliest born person ever to be photographed on film. Naturally, nobody likes to assume anything, not even historians. Still, suppose the woman's attire and expressionless face in the photo indicate anything. In that case, this is a reasonably fantastic snapshot of a woman who lived in a completely different era than the 21st century. Peter Freuchen. Danish explorer Peter Freuchen gained notoriety with his Thule expeditions, traversing more than 600 miles of Arctic ice to demonstrate that a waterway separated Peary Land from Greenland. Robert Peary, an explorer, claimed that what Freuchen and his companion Knud Rasmussen demonstrated was untrue. Due to the difficult conditions they had to travel through, the 2 explorers' quest was almost over. Jane Doe post-mortem. Although the woman's identity in this picture is still unknown, it's thought that she lived in the 19th century and was among the first persons to be captured on camera after death. Because of her appearance, namely how soulless and glued on her mouth and eyes seem, some on Reddit think the photo is a post-mortem. Grigory Efimovich Rasputin. In the era of Imperial Russia, Grigory Efimovich Rasputin was a Russian mystic and holy man who served Nicholas II and other members of the Romanov family. Despite having made friends with them, Rasputin betrayed the royal family. Rasputin has appeared in modern culture in various forms, most notably in the 1997 movie Anastasia. Rhoda Derry. Although Rhoda Derry was a young woman who spent the majority of her life as a mental patient, what draws people in most is the tale surrounding her condition. Rhoda was seeing a young man named Charles, and Charles' mother did not like her. The mother threatened to put a hex on Rhoda if she didn't leave her kid alone. Witchcraft terrified Rhoda. Rhoda soon started exhibiting symptoms of mental illness that were characterized as madness around the age of 18. She was declared blind and insane when she was admitted to the Adams County Almshouse at the age of 25, and she lived the remainder of her adult life in institutions, passing away just one day short of age 72. Harriet Beecher Stowe. Author and abolitionist Harriet Beecher Stowe is well known for her work Uncle Tom's Cabin, which helped bring attention to the cruel treatment of slaves in the nation. Her work gained widespread recognition and catalyzed others to rebel against slavery, particularly in the North. Throughout her life, Stowe wrote 30 novels, many of which focused on social concerns and her position at the time. Her creations are regarded as having had a significant influence today. Helen Keller. A disease claimed Helen Keller's sight and hearing at just over a year old. She first met Anne Sullivan, her lifelong friend and teacher, when she was young. Anne Sullivan helped her learn how to read, write, and speak. As a young adult, she was the first deaf-blind person to graduate with a bachelor's degree from Harvard University's Radcliffe College. She wrote 14 books, innumerable speeches, and essays and supported the rights of disabled people, labor unions, and women. George Armstrong Custer. In 1861, George Armstrong Custer, an officer of the United States Army, graduated from West Point at the bottom of his class. However, he proved to be a capable leader during the American Civil War, and at the age of 23, he was elevated to the rank of Brigadier General of Volunteers. He fought in the American Indian Wars after showcasing his bravery in the Civil War. During that period, on June 25, 1876, he led the 7th Cavalry Regiment when he and 5 companies were murdered at Little Bighorn, now known as Custer's Last Stand, by an alliance of Indians. Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini was born into a family of schoolteachers and blacksmiths in a tiny Italian village. He was appointed Italy's prime minister in the 1920s and served as such until the early 1940s. It might surprise some to learn that Mussolini was multilingual, speaking German, French, Italian, and English. Because of his prior incarceration, he overcame severe claustrophobia throughout the years. Geronimo. Known as the One Who Yawns, Geronimo was an Apache chief and healer from the Berancoe Band. The Apache United States battle, which arose from the American settlement of Apache territory following the Mexican-American War, is thought to have involved Geronimo, a reverend and feared Native American, leading multiple raids against Mexican and American forces. After escaping from numerous Indian reservations, Geronimo was always on the run for the United States until he was apprehended. He began making his living by going to exhibits and other public events. The Wright brothers. Orville and Wilbur Wright were brothers who worked on various gadgets at their shop in Dayton, Ohio, and developed their skills as mechanics. Subsequently, they designed and constructed the first motor-operated airplane. They made their first flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina on December 17, 1903, in a plane known as the Wright Flyer. In addition to successfully launching humans into the air, the brothers are recognized for creating aircraft controls that enabled powered fixed-wing flight. Daniel F. Bakeman. Daniel F. Bakeman was the final soldier to serve in the Revolution and receive a veteran's pension. He served as a private in the Tryon County Militia for the final 4 years of the war. After the war, he settled down, married Susan Brewer, and had 8 kids. John Tyler. Before assuming the presidency in 1841 after William Henry Harrison's death, John Tyler was Harrison's vice president. From 1841 to 1845, he held the position of head of state. Unfortunately for Tyler, many historians rank his administration poorly despite particular academics' high regard for his politics. Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was a well-known poet from America who lived from 1830 to 1886. Dickinson wrote 1,800 poems in her lifetime. Sadly, of all of her works, only 10 poems and 1 letter were released before her passing. Known for being quirky, her poetry used slant rhymes, short lines, and usually no titles, making them unique in the era. Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce, born in 1804, was elected 14th President of the United States in 1853. Unfortunately, several of his presidential actions sparked the American Civil War in 1861. Despite his generous nature, Pierce is regarded by many historians and academics as one of the weakest and least memorable presidents. Sylvia Plath. American poet Sylvia Plath has authored many poems, novels, and collections. The Bell Jar and the poetry collections Ariel and the Colossus and other poems are among her most well-known pieces. Despite winning the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry in 1982, she passed away in 1963. Robert E. Lee. Perhaps the most well-known aspect of Robert E. Lee's career is his service as a Confederate States of America commander of the American Civil War. During the conflict, he gained recognition for his talent as a tactician and was held in high regard. Later, he was elected president of Washington College, becoming Washington and Lee University in his honor. Marie Curie. Marie Curie was a brilliant physicist and chemist who made significant contributions to the field of radioactivity, a word she invented while working in the lab. Curie, born in 1867, was the first female Nobel laureate. She eventually acquired another, making her the only woman in history to get 2. Ichabod Crane. Colonel Ichabod Crane, born in 1787, was a professional military officer who served in the U.S. Army and Marine Corps for 48 years. Crane lived through many wars, such as the Black Hawk War, the Patriot War, and the War of 1812. His name may be familiar to readers as the main character in Washington Irving's book, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Chief Seattle. Chief Seattle, the Suquamish and Duwamish people's chieftain, was born in 1786. He gained notoriety for cultivating connections with the newcomers to Washington state, most notably Doc Maynard, an American pioneer. Seattle was named after the chief because of the harmonious connections he fostered. Conrad Hayer. Conrad Hayer's claim to fame is that he may be the first man to be photographed. Born in 1749, Hayer worked as a farmer before enlisting in the American Revolution. He participated in the historic Delaware River crossing in December 1776, fighting under General George Washington's command. He reached the age of 106. James K. Polk. The 11th President of the United States, James K. Polk, was the first to resign after serving 1 term without running for office again. He's credited with increasing the size of the United States by winning the Mexican-American War, fortifying the executive branch, and reducing tariffs. Historians and academics agree that Polk was a good president who completed the major tasks on his agenda. Johnny Appleseed Chapman. Johnny Appleseed, real name John Chapman, was a pioneering nurseryman. He traveled throughout the United States bringing apple trees to new communities in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and Ontario, Canada. Even in his day, Johnny Appleseed was considered a legend for being a good man and a pioneer in environmental conservation. Jefferson Davis. During the American Civil War from 1861 to 1865, politician Jefferson Davis was the President of the Confederate States, for which he's most known. However, he accomplished more throughout his lifetime. In addition, Davis served as the Secretary of War under President Franklin Pierce, senator from Mississippi, and a combatant in the Mexican-American War. Sir John Herschel. Sir John Herschel was a multi-talented individual. He was an astronomer, mathematician, inventor, chemist, experimental photographer, and even the first person to draw a blueprint. While studying the stars, Herschel named 4 moons of Uranus, a planet discovered by his father, Sir William Herschel, and 7 moons of Saturn. Ernest Hemingway. 1899 saw the birth of American novelist Ernest Hemingway. Several of his most well-known works were published in the 20th century, demonstrating his enormous influence on writing. His best-known books are For Whom the Bell Tolls, Farewell to Arms, and The Old Man and the Sea. These days, a lot of his books are regarded as masterpieces. Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna. Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra Fedorovna were the parents of Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna, born in 1801. The final Tsar of Imperial Russia was her father. Despite numerous tales of her escape during the palace siege, Grand Duchess Anastasia passed away on July 7, 1918, along with her family. Edvard Munch. Many people believed Norwegian painter Edvard Munch to be insane, particularly after the release of his well-known work The Scream in 1893. It turns out that Munch experienced severe anxiety and delusions, which are evident in a number of his works. Knowing that he was on the verge of insanity, Munch checked himself into a therapeutic clinic in 1908. Charles Dickens. English author Charles Dickens is known for several beloved classic books such as Oliver Twist, Tale of Two Cities, and Great Expectations. The latter has even been turned into movies and stage productions. Regretfully, Dickens is reported to have battled bipolar disorder and deep depression all of his life. He passed away in 1870. Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was born July 10, 1856. He was an engineer, futurist, and Serbian-American inventor. Despite having one of the sharpest minds of the day, he struggled with mental stability. In reality, Tesla was raised by parents with mental illnesses. There's a rumor that he suffered from OCD so severe that he had to wear white gloves when eating. Jack Kerouac. The Sea is My Brother, the debut book by American novelist Jack Kerouac, was released 40 years after his passing. However, he became well-known during his lifetime for his 1950 book The Town in the City, which was published. Many renowned artists like Bob Dylan claim to have been influenced by him and his enduring impact. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, born in 1858, became the 26th President of the United States. Roosevelt achieved much while in office, spearheading the progressive movement and enacting the well-known Square Deal domestic programs. Historians and academics rank Teddy Roosevelt among the best 5 presidents to have held the office. Ulysses S. Grant. During the American Civil War, Ulysses S. Grant commanded the Union Army before becoming the nation's 18th president. He's regarded as one of history's finest generals. He even served as Secretary of War for a brief period. During his post-presidency tour, he became the first former president to round the globe, which was one of his most impressive accomplishments. Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll's extraordinary imagination introduced the world to the fantastic tales of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, and What Alice Found There. The English author, born in 1832, struggled with stuttering as a child, which later influenced the dodo bird in Alice. Karl Marx. Karl Marx, a German philosopher who lived from 1836 to 1860, is well known for his political and economic theories and ideas. Throughout his career, he openly criticized the political system. His seminal work, The Communist Manifesto, was published in 1846 and has been studied by generations of scholars worldwide. Marxism refers to his theory of the working class organizing and toppling the capitalist system to establish a classless communist society. Jack London. Jack London, the author, was raised in poverty and attempted his hand at a gold mine before launching his rapidly successful writing career. His writing approach was novel then because most people had never read science fiction. Among his numerous best-selling books were The Call of the Wild, White Fang, The Sea Wolf, and many more. Admittedly leftist, he was involved in the radical literary organization The Crowd in San Francisco, and his personal life was not without controversy. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during World War II, is among the most well-known figures of the 20th century. He's renowned for his role in defending liberal democracy in Europe and alerting the public to the threat posed by the Soviet Union and fascism through his warnings of the Iron Curtain. In 1953, Churchill received the Nobel Prize in Literature. Throughout his life, he also produced more than 500 paintings. Robert Frost. Robert Frost, an American poet, is arguably one of the most well-known authors of the 20th century. His writings about American rural life, which include Nothing Gold Can Stay, After Apple Picking, and Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, are well recognized. Friedrich Nietzsche. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche started his career early, holding the chair of classical philosophy at a university in his native country at age 24. He introduced his radical perspective beliefs, most famously his Death of God theory, which first appeared in his publications in 1882. Because of his crippling health problems, Nietzsche was taken care of by his mother and later by his sister. It was found that his sister had been modifying his unpublished works, adding and removing points of view to make them represent her opinions rather than his. Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, the father of psychoanalysis, made significant contributions to psychology, psychiatry, and psychotherapy during his lifetime. He created therapeutic methods such as free association and found transference, which is used in Western culture today. He also researched the interpretation of dreams and the influence of thoughts of the unconscious mind. Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman, an American poet and journalist, is widely recognized as the founder of the free verse and was a prolific writer. He was renowned for his historical accuracy and commitment to telling only authentic tales of America's past. You cannot understand America without Walt Whitman, without Leaves of Grass, says art historian Mary Whitall Smith Costello. He has expressed that civilization up to date, as he would say, and no student of the philosophy of history can do without him. Tsar Nicholas II. The Emperor of Imperial Russia, Tsar Nicholas II, ruled from 1894 to 1917. The Tsar encountered fierce opposition as he worked to further the goals of his prime minister, including economic reform, which finally led to his and his family's downfall during the Revolution. The Grand Duchess Anastasia is undoubtedly his most well-known child. Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso, a renowned Spanish painter, is arguably best known for his iconic pieces, which include Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, A la Pin Agile, and The Old Guitarist. Picasso was a very skilled sculptor, stage designer, ceramist, and printmaker in addition to his paintings. Among the most well-known artists of the 20th century is him. Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe was well known for his poetry and seductive and enigmatic short stories, including The Mask of the Red Death, The Telltale Heart, and The Fall of the House of Usher. Of course, a discussion about Poe would be incomplete without including the poems The Raven, Annabel Lee, and Dream Within a Dream. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon